Hi everyone! In this week's video we're going to take one of the very basic text SVG files I've created, give it a little bit of flair and turn it into a print then cut sticker. I'll be using Affinity 3 and then I'll take it into Cricut Design Space and Silhouette Studio, all of which are free to use, and I'm using a Windows PC. So let's get started. I've already opened Affinity and set up a portrait A4 page. The page size isn't too important here unless you plan to print directly from Affinity. We're purely using it as a base to open our file. And the file I'm using today is a free download on my Ko-fi page. If you'd like to know a bit more about Ko-fi and how to download the files, I'll link a short video below explaining exactly how to do that. You don't have to use this file, but it can make it easier to follow along. To open the SVG file, go to Place, then navigate to where the file you're using is saved and open. You can then either double click and it will open the file in the original size, or drag it to the size you want it to be. When using an SVG as a cut file, the colour doesn't matter as you'll be cutting it in your selected vinyl colour. But as we're turning this into a sticker, we can also customise the colours. With some files you can simply go to the colour wheel and then change the settings there, but it's a little bit different with SVG files. And so the first thing we need to do is double click on it, and this will then open it up in a new tab called Embedded. When you look at the file in the Layers panel, you'll see that the dash is separate from the text. So before we make any changes, just make sure that you're clicked on the top of the group, so that when we make the changes it will alter everything. To change the colour, we can either click on the Colour tab in the Layers panel here, or on the top menu bar we have the options there as well. The first one is to change the main body, and the one next to it is to change the outline of the image. And you have various ways to select a colour, but for ease I'm using the swatch menu. You can also adjust the thickness of the outline of the characters, but for this project I'm going to keep it at 0 today. You could also, if you wanted to, make some changes to the design. So if we click on the dashed line here, we can make it a little bit smaller and we can move it over slightly. Or you could change it to dots, you could remove it, you could make it into a flourish or a pretty symbol, anything really you want. Now if we go back over to the original window, you can see that the colour and the dashed line have both updated. So now let's add some effects to our design. On the panel on the right hand side of your screen, you may have a Quick Effects tab. It all depends on your settings and the options you've decided to make visible. But the FX button can also be found at the bottom of the Layers panel. We can reposition this panel so it gives us a bit more room and see what we're working on. And you can also adjust the bottom slider to move across your page. So the first effect we'll add is 3D, which we can select from the list of options. Once selected, it brings up all the settings that you can alter. The first thing we're going to do is adjust the radius, and you'll notice that it turns it almost black, but don't worry, we can change that as we come down to diffuse. And as we drag that slider across, you'll see it changes back to blue. Next is specular, which controls how light reflects off the surface, and you can adjust that as much as you want again, just using the easy slide control. Or you can enter a number in the box at the side of it. And if you come down to direction, by holding down your left mouse button, you can move the ball around, which alters the angle of the direction of light. Then we can adjust the shininess and the ambient settings. And obviously all of these are personal choice. You can change them as much or as little as you want. Just play around with it. You've always got the option of using the undo feature, readjusting the sliders, or even just opening up the SVG file and starting again. Now that we've added our 3D effect, let's add an outline to this. First I'll increase the radius to create the outline effect, and then I'll come down to Fill Style and change it from solid to contour. If I double click on the gradient box, I can adjust the sliders, and I can also pick a different colour. What's especially useful if you have an image with lots of colours and you wanted to match one, you can hold down your left mouse button on the dropper tool and drag it over to the filled items to grab a colour. And again, you can play around with the sliders, put them in different positions until you're happy with them and how your design looks. And after you've added the outline, you could go back into the 3D option if you wanted to and make some further adjustments. Now I could sit here all day and play with this, but I won't, and I'm happy with how this looks. So we can close this window and we'll centre things up again. And finally, we want to export it, and we're going to export it as a PNG so that we can take it into both Design Space or Silhouette Studio to make it into a sticker. So with the image selected, we'll go to File, Export and Export again. You can see PNG is already highlighted because that was the last option I used. In the settings, I'll choose Selection Only, and this ensures only the design exports without the extra space around it. Then we can click Export. I'll save mine as Don't Wait Create Updated, but obviously you can choose your own file name. And then we'll click Save. And now to make it into a sticker, first we'll go over to Cricut Design Space, but Silhouette users can skip ahead using the chapters below. I've loaded a blank canvas and we'll go to Upload, select Upload Image and click on Browse, go to the folder where we saved the file and select our PNG file. It tells us it's a large file, and that's fine, we can make it smaller in a minute. We want a flat graphic and it will go through the upload process. We get a warning because it's loaded larger than we can do a print and cut, so I'll take it down to say 4 inches and the warning goes away. So with it selected, we'll click on the Edit tab, and there you've got the options, and today we're going to click on the sticker option. You can either make it a kiss cut sticker, which means you can peel it off a sheet, or make it into an individual die cut sticker. Today I'll choose kiss cut, and you can use either one of the preset options or customize it how you want by dragging the slider until you're happy. And I like that, which is 0.17. We can then close that down, and then you can go through the next steps to duplicate the image if you want to make several, print the sheet out and then cut them. I've again got an A4 page open, and the first thing we need to do is go to File, Merge and navigate to the folder where we saved the PNG file. If I go to add an offset, you'll see that it's simply added a rounded box around the image, and it does this with some files even though we saved it as a PNG with a transparent background. But not to worry, as we can get around that by using the trace feature. So I'll open up the trace window and select what we want to trace, and it doesn't have to be exact as we are using this purely for an offset, but I find setting the threshold to around 80 gives me a pretty good result, and then we'll click on Trace Outer Edge. I'll drag off the image and I'm going to change the trace outline it created to black, and I'll explain why in a moment, but you don't have to do this. Now we can select the trace, go to Offset, and again either enter a number or adjust our slider until we're happy with the result, and then we can hit Apply. The reason I changed it to black is just because sometimes the trace may produce a stray node, and if you open up the Select by Colour window, then I can select the black outline just to make sure that I'm deleting everything. Then I can drag my mouse over both objects and hit the centre button and bring it back over to our page. And so now we have an offset outline of our design that we can use to make a sticker. We can turn on the registration marks, resize it, and use the replicate panel to fill our page before we print it out. I hope this video has been helpful in showing you how, using Affinity 3 and just a couple of its built-in effects, you can take a simple design and very quickly and easily enhance it. If you've enjoyed this video, then please hit the like button and subscribe. Bye for now.